In this episode, we are going to see how to dockerize MEVN Stack. So I have published the article on Medium a long time ago. So we are going to use the same repo which is there in that article, and we're going to clone the repository first, and then we'll install all the necessary tools like VS Code, Docker Desktop, and use those tools to run this example project on Docker. And we're going to see how to do that step by step. So without much delay, let's get started. Let's go to the link. This is the Medium link that I'm talking about. Here is a step-by-step process, and these are the prerequisites. We don't have to install all the things right now, and the example project and the GitHub link, everything is provided in the document. So let's clone that GitHub link, and we can clone this and import this project into VS Code and look at the code. You can import into any IDE. So actually I'm going to import this into VS Code. So once imported, we can see there are multiple folders here. The main folders that we should note is API and UI. So UI is for front end and API is for back end. Now let's hit the terminal and let's change the directory into UI, and let's build the UI code and see whether the project is running or not. As these are Node.js projects, the first thing we need to do is install Node dependencies. So once that step is done, we can actually run the project. Okay, let's run this project. So once you run npm run serve, so this UI is running on some 8080 port. So you can copy that link and hit it in the browser. You can actually see that the project is running on port 8080. Now we have seen the UI is working, and let's see whether the API is working or not. Change the directory into API, and we have to follow the same process. We need to install Node dependencies first, and then let's look at the package.json as well, so that we can we will get to know the npm scripts. So npm run dev. So let's run npm run dev. So we have a problem here. So we don't have any Mongo connection. So we just need to set up that. Let's set it up. We will use MongoDB Atlas account. So for that, we just Google MongoDB Atlas, so that will take you to the MongoDB Atlas page, home page. And so we can actually we need to create an account before we use it. So either you can sign up with Google. If you have a Google account, you can use it to log in, or you can actually create your own MongoDB Atlas account. So I'm using the Google account to log in. So you need to accept those terms of service, and then it will ask you a bunch of questions. What is the primary use of this MongoDB for you? What is the role? What is your role? And which language that you intend to use this MongoDB, like Node.js or it's a programming language, or Java, whatever. So since we are using Node.js, so we need to select Node.js, and what type of data that you want to store in this MongoDB. And so let's answer all these questions, and let's click on that next button. So once you click on that next button, you have to choose the tier, serverless, M10 dedicated, or M0. M0 is the free one. So let's choose M0, and it will take some time to get, for the cluster to create. So meanwhile, you can actually look at the security things here, so where you can create username and password, and also you can add you can whitelist your IP address. So let's look at all these. And the first thing what we need to do is, since we are going to connect to this MongoDB instance, we need a username and password. So you can just add username and the password, or you can auto generate the password. It's up to you. So since I want to remember my username and password, so that's why I just in production this is not recommended. For this demo purpose, I just created password as tester123, and let's create that user. Let's go to the next section. Since we are actually connecting to the MongoDB Atlas account through from our local machine, so we just need to select my local environment and add your IP address, or you can just add 0/0, which actually allows from anywhere. You can connect to the MongoDB instance from anywhere, that means. And also this is also not recommended in production, so this is only for demo purpose. So once that is done, it actually, once the cluster is created, and once cluster is created, you can connect to the MongoDB instance. So there are so many ways to connect. So since we are connecting to this MongoDB instance through our Node.js application, we have to select that particular thing and take that URL, connection URL, copy that, and let's go to our code base, where if you open API and if you go to environmental.env environment file, so in which we have defined Mongo connection string. So you have to replace this string, Mongo connection string, with the URL that we just copied from MongoDB Atlas account. And in place of username and password, you just need to put whatever the username and password that you created in MongoDB Atlas account. And also, since we just cloned it from a Git repository, so I named that .env to .env dev, so we just have to rename back. So when you push to Git repository, the .env files will be ignored. So that is the reason why I changed the name. So let's run it again. Still we have some problem here. I think we don't have it in the password. Let's remove that and try to connect again. Yep, now the database is connected. We are successfully connected to the database right now. Since our MongoDB connection string is solved, let's test our application whether we can load the data from the backend or not. Let's reload this application. So now we are still not getting the data. So let's see what is going on. So we have a proxy config where, okay, so the host name is different. So we have to change the host name to localhost, since the both API and UI are running on the same host, which is localhost. Now let's rerun the UI and reload the application. So once we reload, you can actually see the data, and let's test it out. So let's create some task. Yep, we can see the data is added to the table. So that means the data is going to backend as well. So we are persisting the data as well. So if you refresh the page, we can actually see the data. Now both UI and API both are working on our local machines. So the next thing what we need to do is, since the primary focus of this video is run everything on Docker, let's look at the Docker file. So we are using multi-stage builds. That means in each stage we are building front end, and the second stage we are building API, and we take those builds in the third stage and run the application together. So let's see how we can. So when we build the UI, we can actually see everything on the dist folder. And let's go to API and build the API. So to build the API, what we need to do is, since we externalize our MongoDB connection string to the environment.env file, we need to make sure that that connection string, since we changed the connection string, we just need to make sure that the connection string is correct in our webpack config.js. We are using webpack to build the API. So let's go to webpack config.js. So here, since we are building for production, we just need to change that MongoDB connection string to our new URL. Once that changed, let's go to Docker file and copy that command, environment equal to production, npm run build. So basically we are passing the environment variable called environment equal to production to the build. So once we run that command, the entire API will be under dist folder. So we have seen how to build the code. Now it's time for us to actually run this application on Docker. So I have opened Docker desktop and let's see whether we have any images on our machine. So we don't have any images, and let's go to the document where we are actually building the Docker image and copy that command, or you can actually type it. So the command is docker build -t. The t is nothing but the tag. We are actually tagging the Docker image, and the dot at the end suggests that we are actually running this at the root of the application and sending the whole application code to the Docker daemon. So once you run this command, it starts reading the Docker file and it actually builds the Docker image. So it usually takes some time because it is a multi-stage Docker build. So it usually takes some time. So I fast forward it to where it actually builds the Docker. Now we have a Docker image. So if you run the command Docker images, now we can actually see the image that we have just built. We can actually see that on the Docker desktop as well. Now go to the section where we run the container. Run this image as a container. Copy this command and put it here. And we have to change the Docker image name to our name. And also we need to change the ports. I think our application is running on port 80, so we have to change that port as well. And I'm going to name this container as app. Let's change the ports. So before changing it, let's go to the code, application code, and see. Let's make sure the port. So we have the port, we are exposing 80 here, and also we just need to make sure in the webpack config also the port is 80. If you look at the server.js, we have a where in the line number 18 we are reading the port with process.env. Now we have this command. Let's run this command. Once you run this command, the Docker runs at the background, so you can list it with docker ps, or we can actually see it on the Docker desktop as well. So now the app is up and running, and if you go to the browser and remove that 8080, now it is not running on the local, it is running in the Docker. So basically now it is running, it is actually we are hitting the Docker container now. Even we are saving the data into database, and even the whole end-to-end process working fine. Here are the logs with you can actually issue the command docker logs the container name, which is app here. We can see the file system. We can issue this command docker exec and your container name, and this is how you can actually see the file system. So if you go through the file system, this is how we configured, we set up the whole file system. So the entire code, the entire API code is API bundle.js, and the entire UI code is under UI. So if you notice line number 17 and 18, so that is how we set up the whole file system when we are building the Docker image. Let's exit. So either you can run commands on terminal, or you can actually do it on the Docker desktop as well. So there are so many options there as well. We can stop this container with stop command with docker stop app, which is the container name. It usually takes some time to actually stop the whole container. So once we stop the container, we can remove it with rm. Now if we run the command docker ps, we don't see any container running, and we can actually see it on the Docker desktop as well. There are no containers running right now. With the docker rmi, which is the remove image, we can remove the image as well. Now if we list the images with Docker images, we don't have any images on our machine. Okay, so thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.